McKinsey and BCG from the consulting industry. Huge power in that group already in April. Then over the summer, we had Delta Airlines, we had E.ON, and we had PwC join the group. And now I have to cheat because this list is getting longer. Today, I'm happy to announce that we have 7 new companies joining. BlackRock, huge financial player. We have Burberry, EY, Inditex, Intertech, SAP, and last but not least, Walmart. So this momentum is building. This is just the beginning, and I'm extremely excited to be here and celebrate this progress. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Andreas, and congratulations to Andreas and to Aaron and the whole Emergent team and the whole LEAF team. As Aaron said, I'm Nat Cohan. I'm the president of the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, but more relevantly for this event, I was the head of climate at EDF when we were helping the Environmental Defense Fund, when we were helping to put this together, and I remain on the board of Emergent. And so I just want to say a couple of quick things. We have a great panel coming up, so I'll be quick. But about what makes, I think, the LEAF Coalition really distinctive in the world, not only of forests, but of climate generally. And I'll start by saying something that probably everybody knows, but that we can't meet any of our Paris goals without tropical forests. And I just want to give you a couple of stats that really stick with me. First, forests, as people know, deforestation is a huge source of emissions, and tropical deforestation is on a par with all the cars and trucks in the world combined. So reducing emissions from deforestation is critical to reducing overall emissions. In addition, tropical forests are an enormous sink that we need to protect. And one stat I recently saw is that without forests, without tropical forests, the world would already be nearly 1 degree Celsius hotter. So we have to both prevent the deforestation and halt the deforestation and then protect these enormous sinks. So how are we going to do that? Well, let me give you 3 distinctive aspects of LEAF, some of which I think Andreas touched on. One is just the collaboration. Some of the ideas behind LEAF, you can date all the way back to collaboration between Brazilian and American scientists, between the Environmental Defense Fund and the Amazon Environmental Research Institute back in the early 2000s, that sort of grew into this idea of jurisdictional REDD or REDD+. But the LEAF Coalition itself represents a collaboration among, as Andreas said, 3 countries, 19 countries on the donor side, 5 now tropical forest countries, and growing, we hope, 19 private sector companies, and civil society organizations like Environmental Defense Fund, as well as Emergent, which is built to do these transactions. So that scale of collaboration is really distinctive. The second thing I think is distinctive is the scale of the finance. $1 billion to mobilize towards protecting tropical forests in a way that allows the tropical forest countries to be developing and to be growing their economies and on this new model of sustainable development, which is really vital. So this isn't about walling off forests and reducing economic output. It's about finding a new model that can allow these tropical forest countries to be green superpowers. And $1 billion of finance is just the first tranche. And I think after that, and we prove the LEAF possibilities, we'll see multiples of that going forward because there's so much need here. And then the third piece, just briefly, is what Andreas said, but I want to underscore it, which is the integrity of the LEAF Coalition, the integrity of the environmental reduction, the emissions reductions, as well as what's happening on the demand side. The standard that all of these emissions reduction credits will meet is the state-of-the-art standard built around jurisdictional scale performance. And it's the best standard. It's a top, recently created top-of-the-line standard to ensure environmental quality, but also social integrity and consultation with stakeholders and so on. And then, as Andreas said, on the demand side, and this is really important, all of the companies have committed to reducing their own emissions in addition to contributing to emissions reductions in tropical forest countries. And that combination is critical. I like to say that climate leadership now for companies means both reducing emissions in your own supply chains and operations and contributing to the broader fight. And LEAF is really the innovator in showing how that can be done. So with that, I will turn it back to Aaron.
Thank you both so much. Listen, I want to just recognize Andreas and Norway, and also somebody who's not here, who's Andreas's partner, formerly at NICFI, who's Per Farrow, who many of you will know, who has also been instrumental in this in the beginning of LEAF. So we give him kudos as well. I know he's not here, and also thank you to EDF and to Nat. And so as you said, LEAF and Emergent is really the platform for collective action, recognizing that we can't do this alone. There's not one company, one country, one government, one NGO that can do this alone. So this is about scaling finance through collective action. So maybe I can invite, I believe we have, yeah. So maybe, thank you both, yep. So as Andreas mentioned, we, at the US Center 2 days ago, we announced LOIs with the first 4 jurisdictions, Vietnam, Ghana, Ecuador, and Nepal. And today, we're delighted to announce we're also signing a 5th LOI with Costa Rica. So delighted to introduce Minister Meza from Minister of Environment from Costa Rica. Delighted to have you. So maybe we can do a quick photo.
Okay, a quick photo like this.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Oh, without this.
Oh yeah, let's do one without the mask.
There you go.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Meza. Would you like to say,
No,
want to say a word or two?
Yeah, thank you so much. We had this negotiation, which was a very interesting, and we learned a lot even in the negotiation, which I think is also part of the process, and very committed and very happy to start right away with the LEAF coalition. I think it has a great potential. We need to continue mobilizing resources to protect the forest, and we really think that this coalition has a big potential to mobilize public and private resources. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Meza, very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. And also recognizing Costa Rica's leadership on sustainability, environment, and forests. They've doubled the size of their forests since the 80s. And for those of us who've been lucky enough to visit Costa Rica, absolutely beautiful country. We'll hope to be able to do so again soon. Thank you, Minister Meza. If I can invite the other forest jurisdiction, I believe we have 3. So if I can invite Rosalind from Ghana, Ecuador, and Vietnam. Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for being here. Perhaps you can introduce yourselves at the beginning of your remarks, but just to say, this really only happens if there's action on the ground. And we're so thrilled at COP because we really started with the demand side as we think about it, mobilizing the commitments, the real commitments from companies and from donor governments to pay for results. And so we're so really incredibly thrilled to be able to start working with these 3 jurisdictions and the other 2 that we've also mentioned. And so I'd love to maybe, Rosalind, turn to you first, and if you could introduce yourself as well. And how does the LEAF Coalition help Ghana? How do you think this can help Ghana, and how do you see this moving forward?
Thank you very much, Aaron. And so a very pleasant morning to everybody gathered here. As Aaron said, I'm Rosalind Fosueje from Ghana. I am the Director for Climate Change at the Forestry Commission, and then also the National Red Plus Focal Point. And for Ghana, we've been through an incredible period of about 12 years of readiness in our Red Plus process, which has developed a strategy for a 20-year period. Within that process of readiness, we have come to realize that about 6 key things are needed. First of all, we need programs and not projects, programs that cover bigger jurisdictions. 1, for the permanence of the initiatives. 2, for shared ownership. And then 3, to avoid any leakage. And our Red Plus strategy has programs that are according to our ecological zones. So, for example, we have program for cocoa, we have a program for share. These are key commodities, and you cannot cross into another ecological zone to have cocoa or to have share. So by having such a program, then really you are addressing issues of leakage and then also issues of permanence. Two, we have also come to realize that we really need strong governance structures that will feed into equitable benefit sharing schemes, that will support inclusive stakeholder involvement, collaborative and collective action. And really we need these structures. For the third thing that I want to mention, the need for public and private partnerships, very, very key. And we are talking about commodities. There already exists a lot of private sector support in the country. Private sector presence for cocoa, for share. How do we harness the already existing financial inflows into climate smart interventions? And how does government beef up its enabling environment structures, policies on tree tenure, on benefit sharing, on social and environmental safeguards to support the work of these private sector actors? And then four, we need very robust livelihood schemes. Nobody gets up, I always keep saying this, nobody gets up to just go into a forest to deforest. It's an issue of a livelihood. If you are not coming across with an alternative, with a commensurate alternative, to be very clear, then whatever action it is, you can be sure that it is not going to work, because we need to provide livelihoods, and it's part of the social interventions that Red Plus programs should come up with. And then fifth, we need sustainable financing. And for sustainable financing, I want to stress on the speed of finance. It's really about the speed. And I think this is where LEAF is coming in. LEAF has all these elements that I've spoken about, and particularly the speed of finance. The ability to mobilize $1 billion in this short frame of time really tells us that the LEAF Coalition Initiative is here for the action that we need for the climate emergency at this particular point in time. And that's why Ghana has put in our bid, and we are very happy that at COP26 we've been able to sign our letter of intent. We really look forward to LEAF delivering on its promise. And yesterday I was telling Aaron that we have very high hopes back home in Ghana, and we started this discussion with Aaron some time ago anyway, about 6 or 5 years ago. And we are very happy that the whole team, right from EDF on to Emergent, has shown great tenacity and commitment. And these things don't come easy. And so when you have such a team, you can be sure that they are committed to deliver on the agenda. And that's why we have this strong alliance. And for Ghana, we are all in. And we really look forward to LEAF delivering, particularly for the people who depend on the forest, and then also delivering towards the climate agenda and enhancing productivity for us. We are talking about commodities, so we want to enhance productivity, and we also want to keep private sector in business on the consumer side. So thank you so much, Aaron.
Can I thank you very much, Rosalind? It's been a long journey, but we're so thrilled to be able to work together. Maybe just a minute before I hand it over. We're all sitting here in the cold, rainy, Scotland. But maybe take us into the forest and what do you talked about livelihoods and some of the other things that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe in a minute or two, on just some examples of the things that you are doing and the team in Ghana is doing to protect the forest, increase livelihoods, all those things? Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I want to use the example of one of our programs. That's for the cocoa and forest landscape that we have. We have built a program we call the Ghana Cocoa Forest Red Plus program on 6 pillars. The very first pillar is on forest reserve protection and rehabilitation. And we have built this pillar because over the years we have learned, once again, going back to projects, that just afforestation, reforestation projects take too much time to generate the needed emission reductions and removals that we need. And over time, the expectations of the communities begin to wane, because you have to wait for about 10, 20 years to just deliver on some minimal credits, and it's not really paying off. So we have that pillar there where we are actively protecting the existing forest lands, making sure that there is no further encroachment, putting in place a forest monitoring system to understand where illegal farms are, how they have been there, what hectareage we have in there, who owns them, and then together develop a strategy to have these illegal farms either moved out through a very voluntary process. We are not looking at any processes of involuntary resettlement. And then we are taking our time to do this because we don't want any stakeholder to be worse off in our Red Plus engagement. Secondly, we are looking at land use planning, very key for us. We do not have a national land use plan in Ghana. If we're going to start this discussion from the government or national level, it is going to take too much time. So we are doing this through the community level, coming together using the decentralized governance structure or government structure to build a land use plan where we zone. Let's keep this area as intact forest. This is where we are going to have our farmlands. This is where we are going to have our settlements. We all come together and agree. And then we move into the governance structures where we have the institutional arrangements on who is involved in this landscape planning and zoning. So that's the third pillar. And there we are actively involving private sector, NGOs, CSOs, traditional authorities. Everybody has a stake in these landscapes. We do not want to leave anybody out. We do not want to marginalize any stakeholder. And we move into a fourth phase of enhancing production. Very, very important. Ghana is the second largest producer of cocoa beans in the world. We cannot have a program where our cocoa sector faces any harsh realities. We understand the value of cocoa to Ghana, and we also understand the value of forest to Ghana. So we are putting in place a mix of interventions like artificial pollination, enhancing irrigation, giving farmers the necessary inputs, putting shade trees on cocoa farms through cocoa agroforestry systems so we can increase the production. As I speak now, when the program started, we were having production at a hectare for about 450 kilograms of cocoa beans. Now we are at about 600 kilograms in just about a year and a half. It shows us that this is workable. And then we go into interventions of risk management and also providing financial options to the farmers. Can we make farming a business case for farmers? As we have it in Ghana, it is more of an inheritance. Cocoa farmers see that they have just inherited farms and not just cocoa farming. But the cocoa industry is a big-time business. We keep referring to these farmers as poor. They are the base of this pyramid of a multi-billion business. How can we let them see the business value of what they are engaged in? That is the fifth pillar. And then we go to the sixth pillar of having policy interventions. Really, the policy to drive and motivate having trees on your farms. The policy to drive equitable benefit sharing. That is how we are doing it back home in Ghana, Aaron. And it's really working. We have put out our first monitoring report for verification and validation and the Carbon Fund. I believe that that would even give us a lot more impetus to gain grounds under LEAF. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. I wish we had time to do a whole session on just what you guys are doing, what each of you are doing in each of your countries. Next up, I'd like to introduce Karina Maribel Barrera from Ecuador, who's the Undersecretary of Climate Change. So over to you. Tell us about Ecuador and how, why you submitted a proposal to LEAF and how you're thinking about this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's important to say that Ecuador is one of the most mega-diverse countries in the world. We have more than 65 types of forest ecosystem in our country, and more than 12 million hectares that are native forest. Ecuador just emit the 0.18% of global gases gas emissions. But if we deforest all of our forests, we can emit 6 billion tons of gases. It means that conservation of our forest is an important issue for not just for Ecuador, for everybody. In this context, Ecuador has been very committed, fully committed with the conservation of nature. We declared the rights of the nature. In our constitution, we respect the rights of the nature. It means some particularities in our form to weigh the environmental services. So we are not part of the carbon market like this way of conception, but we can be retributed by our actions in order to avoid the emissions. It's a different way of thing. In this context, we have worked with RED Plus. We have been working since 2009, and we have received results by payment for results. We were the second country in the world to receive this kind of process, because we'd have a very strong monitoring system. We have strong safeguards, social and environmental safeguards. It's very important to say that, because our process was very inclusive. We included the process was built with the communities, indigenous communities. They are part of this process. Another particularity is that we have been working at national level. We don't work at a jurisdictional level. We work at national level, and we include the subnational governments. We are working in some challenges, for example, in payment by achievements with the national governments, in order to have to include them in the actions of the territories. Other important thing is the indigenous communities are part of this scheme. They are working in a particular, we call implementation plans that are part of the Big Red Plus, but they develop by their own cosmovisions. How do they want to implement Red Plus? We have four important lines in Red Plus. Like you said before, we have the instruments to the territorial planning, the land use of the territory. I think that it's very important to include this. And the second is the transformation to a sustainable agriculture systems. We are working in a certification of products free of deforestation. But one of our challenges, who appreciate this? Maybe we can work in the territories in products free of deforestation, but if anybody wants these kind of products and value them, maybe we don't have the market. This is one of our challenges now. We work in integrated use landscapes. We work with sociobosque. We call this a mechanism to incentivize the people, the communities, to conserve the forests. So they receive a payment to conserve in order to make bio startups, for example. And one of our priorities now is to work in bioeconomy. You know, the forest has to be an alternative to live, to the people improve their quality of life. So Ecuador, after the pandemic, Ecuador decreased 10 years in the indicators of poverty, and we decreased in 8% the GDP. So the forests are threatened because the illegal actors want or give money to the people, the communities, in order to deforest. We address new challenges after the pandemic. So these mechanisms of finance are very important for countries like us. We are very committed in the conservation, but I think that the pressure over the forests are not just us. It's about the ways that we consume. This is the main, I think, the trend is for the forest, and the other is the finance. We have many plans. We are clear, we have studied the drivers of the deforestation, and we are clearly moving into address this, but the finance is an important question for us.
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up question. You had mentioned the stakeholder engagement and the safeguards, and I know Ecuador has very strong indigenous and local populations. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you thought about that, how that process works and continues to work? Because what we know is important is that those who are closest to the forest are in the best position to be the guardians of the forest. And so how do you manage that on the ground? Maybe just a word or two about that.
The inclusive process has been involving indigenous people since 2013. For example, we have a Red Plus board where indigenous people is part of this, and private sector too. Public sector too, we have dialogues, and they are part of the governance of the mechanism. This is very important. And then they want to be part of the architecture, financial architecture. So this is the second challenge with them. And they has been part of this on one hand, they are part of the decision making, they have been developing the similar process, a program, a small program, for example, with the communities, like is similar to the big program of Red Plus. So they are receiving part of the results for payment for results that we received as country. They receive part of this, and they implement for this kind of programs, and they replicate in the indigenous communities how to work. For example, they divide the land. They said this is for chakras. They said this is the way where they make the agriculture. They separate the place where they can live, and this is part of the way to the conservation and the sustainable use of the land. This is the I think that is a way to replicate the big model of the country. And then now we are working with the financial system, trying to include to the banks in order to create new green products and align to the Red Plus. So it's very important, because if they don't have enough money to implement, for example, fences in the agriculture, to limit the space, if they don't have these finance models, microfinance models, they are not going to be able to implement these activities. So it's very important for us to involve the financial system on a national level and subnational level too.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And lastly, I want to introduce the representative from Vietnam, and we're really pleased to be working with Vietnam as well. So can you tell us how LEAF fits into Vietnam's strategy for protecting its forests? Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Like Ghana, we have been working for like a Red Plus readiness for 12 years. So it's a long journey. And Vietnam is ready for the next phase, what we call reason-based payment. So this means LEAF is the right time. Because we have the National Action Plan for Red Plus implementations until 2030, with the objective of maintaining the 42% of the forest areas of the countries. And what we love about doing with LEAF is the scale. Because this one requires the larger scale of at least 2.5 million hectares. And with those scale, we can work at regional level. If you work with Vietnam, you will see that we have small provinces. But in order to reach those scale, we have to work at the regional level. And in order to join LEAF, we combine the two regions together so that we can apply the landscape approach as well. And the second option is that regarding one of the main drivers of deforestation in Vietnam is agricultural expansion. So joining LEAF, we would like to promote what we call deforestation-free commodity, working with supply chains, working with private companies, with production sectors to make sure that the improve in quality and in productivity without expanding the deforestation. So I think those two. The third key problems is that, as Aaron said, that the people who protecting forests are forest guardians. But in Vietnam, 25% of people living near or inside forests are poor. So putting back the questions for us, why? They are forest guardian. Why they're so poor? It's our job as a government official. Either we have to do with the policy, but also with financial incentive to help them to improve their livelihood, helping them with what we call now smart agriculture, without expanding the areas, but also increasing their income, increasing their livelihood. So, and now we do with the supply chains to improve the premium, the income for those people living near the forest. So I think that the targets of LEAF totally incompatible with our objectives. So it's so good to work with you all. Yes.
I was just going to ask one question on the agricultural expansion. How does the, that we hear sometimes about protection and production, and I think LEAF is intended to support the protection piece. How does the protection piece interplay with the agricultural expansion? How are you thinking about that? Maybe you can remark on that for me.
So for forest classification in Vietnam, we have 3 types. The first one is what we call special new forest, but here you can call it is protected areas. So strictly no exploitation, no harvesting. So that's for conservation and biodiversity purposes. But the other 2 types is protection, whether it's for watershed or the riverine system. So those we would do either protection and enrichment. And the last one with the what we call plantation or production forest. With REDD+ and LEAF intervention, we encourage what we call long-term rotation. So instead of cutting it too early, about from 5 or 6 years for palm wood or for plywood, now we can increase the cycle to make it like a logging with more value and store more carbon. And then with the material to produce furnitures and chairs and outdoor furnitures. So not only to cut the emission, but also to improve their income as well. So, and the other one is we do the models of farm forestry. That's a plantation with indigenous or native species with longer term, together with, especially in the Central Highland, with other commodity like interplanting, with rubber, with coffee, with peppers. So make it more sustainable, especially in terms not only for forests but also for water use as well.
Well, thank you very much to the 3 of you. Really excited at LEAF and Emergent to be working with you, and we've got a lot of work to do over the next few months together, and very much looking forward to it. I just want to acknowledge, I just realized this while we were up on stage. Well, including Minister Meza, we have 4 women representing their jurisdiction, so I think that's exciting. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And for our last panel, I want to introduce a private sector perspective. So maybe Jop and Helga can join on stage. And this really the engine of the demand, right, of the finance is coming from the private sector. And we're incredibly proud to have McKinsey & Company and Bayer as participants in the LEAF Coalition. One of the things that was really critical about LEAF, and I think one of the real innovations, I would say, perhaps the first time that there were not only criteria, high integrity criteria put on the supply side through high quality verification, third-party verification standards, but also on the demand side. And so all of the companies who are participating in LEAF are committing to reduce their own emissions on a net zero pathway, and we have a robust set of criteria that each of them had to meet. So McKinsey, Bayer, and the other 17 companies are all doing this, and then using these credits for their for those residual supplemental emissions. So, Helga, maybe I can turn to you first and tell us why Bayer joined the LEAF Coalition.
Thanks so much. In a way, it's amazing that it didn't exist before. Why? Because for us, it was essential, if I might say, 4 things. One seems obvious. The dimension of the challenge meant that you needed a match solution and approach. And having such an unprecedented collaboration between the private and the public sector is the only chance we have to be truly systematic, to be transformational and bring the scale that is needed. So that was the first thing that was tremendously attractive to us. Second, and it was mentioned before, the market mechanism, making sure that for that transformation we signal as corporation there's a demand, we want that, there's a market, was essential, it was aligned to the way we approach things. The third was the incentives. In general, that's our approach too. How do we work with incentivizing these forest countries rather than with other approaches? And finally, the highest quality. So if I might say, with all this, for us, it was clear this is a unique approach, a unique opportunity to make a true difference. And if I might say, as you said before, this goes beyond of what we are committed, and I can talk later about that. But just in a general, in a narrow sense, it's clear beyond of what we are doing, LIF fits to any remaining emissions. But just beyond that, yeah, we work in agriculture, and it was mentioned before. How do we bring resilience and change to make agriculture part of the solution? It goes perfectly well to what we are doing, because as my boss says always, no rainforest, no rain. How could we feed the world without it? It's part of future-proofing what we need to do in agriculture, and in a just bigger picture. That's why we were so interested in joining.
Thank you so much, Helga. Really appreciate it. And just to acknowledge Bayer and Helga and Matthias and the team at Bayer have been such great and proactive participants in LEAF, and we really do appreciate it. Maybe I can turn to you, Job. McKinsey & Company is really a thought leader and also working with so many other companies on advising them. And so maybe you can also answer the same question for McKinsey, but also how you're thinking about talking to other companies about this that are your clients.
Sure, thank you, Aaron. And yeah, first of all, maybe just real quick, it was so great to hear the approaches from Ghana, Ecuador, and Vietnam. It's really what makes me very excited about this coalition, and just wanted to briefly say that we're super proud to be supporting those efforts. Yeah, so when I look at McKinsey, we are committed to net zero by 2030. And what that means is that we will first reduce our own emissions aligned with climate science. We have science-based targets. So as a professional services firm, we are finding hybrid ways to work, ways of working. We are electrifying our company cars, making our offices more sustainable, using renewable electricity and all of that. And that's the first priority, and that's also a requirement for LEAF, to first and foremost reduce your own emissions. That's what we're focused on. And for our remaining emissions, by 2030, we'll remove carbon from the atmosphere, for example, through reforestation projects. But in addition to that, between now and then, during our transition, we also compensate for all of our emissions that we have not been able to eliminate yet. And that's what we focus mostly on nature conservation. And the reason for that is twofold. On the one hand side, as was already said earlier today, there is not really a way to reach a 1.5 degree pathway without nearly halting deforestation this decade. So we cannot wait until we have decarbonized everything to save nature. And secondly, besides the climate crisis, we also have a nature crisis. And that's not just about biodiversity, it's also about rain and supporting agriculture going forward. It's about pollination and whatnot. All of these services that are also super critical for economies and for livelihoods. So we really need to step up in both areas. And now let me get to LEAF and why I think LEAF is such a great way to go about that. I think it's because on the one hand side, it does it in a way that's of high integrity. And we talked about the demand side with, you need to have science-based targets, you need to be committed to net zero, etc. On the supply side, all kinds of great things there to make sure that this is really of high integrity. But even more so, it's super scalable. We just heard from some of the other panelists that they spent 12 years on red readiness. We now need to accelerate. We now need to really scale up. And I think what you've seen in the past 6 months is already a great example of how that scale can be achieved, with more than 20 proposals by jurisdictions that put forward their plans, with $1 billion mobilized from both the public and the private sectors that I think within LEAF work more together than what we've seen in the past. I think we need to do more of that. We haven't done enough of that collaboration between public and private. And I think that's what makes this really cool. And the 1 billion may sound not too big in terms of the magnitude of the challenge that we have. But this is just in 6 months, and much more is to come. And I think that was the main question, like it would be great, and we really hope that many more companies will join us in Leaf. We now have 19 companies involved. We need many, many more, because only then we can really realize that potential, I think, that this approach and that Leaf has. So, yeah, very much invite any of you who are here representing your companies to consider joining Leaf, to consider meeting the demand side integrity criteria that come with potentially joining Leaf, and yeah, please reach out. Yeah, if you have an interest, happy to talk to any of you.
Thank you so much, Al. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. So one of the questions that we get a lot is, how are companies using these credits, right? What are the corporate, claims that companies are going to be making into the future as they use, credits that they get through Leaf? And maybe before I turn to you, just to explain, maybe get a little bit into the guts of how Leaf works. We've got 4 what we call transaction pathways. The first 2 are involve basically a results-based payment, where there's no transfer of a credit from the host jurisdiction to the buyer. And the first one is for sovereign donors, and the second one is for corporates. And then the third and fourth pathway involve a transfer of a credit from the host jurisdiction to the buyer. The only difference is one involves a corresponding adjustment. So if you feel like getting into the detail of how you're thinking about that, that's great. But I think it's, just provide some context, but also how are you thinking about using, these credits in the future? And maybe if you want to touch on some of the claims that you're thinking about making, or at least how you're starting to think about that. Helga, you want to start?
Well, just to repeat, right? For us, we are true north, if you will, in terms of climate change. It's clear by 2050 to be net zero in all our 3 scopes. That's the true north, and we are aligned with SBTi. As a midterm, we are reducing 42% of emissions by 2029. So we will be doing all these in all 3 scopes. That the part of Leaf, and this is very clear, in a narrow sense, it's only to remain in our own operations net zero for any remaining emissions. But that's in the narrow sense. I think what I wanted to convey in a larger sense, it is essential to achieve anything on climate, as you were saying. If we don't stop deforestation, every other effort it's not useless, but it will not get us there. So it is clear for anybody of us, if we're committing to 1.5, we need to work on that. And working in agriculture and nature, the ecosystem services that you mentioned are essential. So that's part in the bigger sense. Now, accompanying this, and I think I just want to mention that because it was mentioned at the very beginning, even if what we do is one part, we need to go even beyond. So the way we are approaching this is first to ensure that we do what we say we're doing. Our boards of managers compensation, long-term compensations, is now tied to that. 20% of their compensation is now tied to us achieving this. But second, because we know we cannot do it alone, we lobby. We lobby companies to join us. We lobby associations, and we lobby the politics to more action on climate change. And just, in fact, to mention briefly, we just published a report showcasing how associations in which Bayer is member are managing climate change, and how does that compare to our own targets. And this will serve for us as a basis to engage with these associations also and move in the right direction. And finally, I think, as I was saying, even beyond all that, the influence that we have in shaping agriculture, in making sure that farmers have the right incentives to capture carbon, and that the transformation of the business is there, that's the way we approach it. I think what Leaf offers is just, it's unlocking unlocking a way of working together and approaching these challenges that it has been really creative and that's why for us essential in order to meet everything.
Thank you so much, Helga. And Joe, same question, but maybe also, I think it's interesting also for other companies that are listening. How do you think about the business case for Leaf? For participating in this, related to the same question, but how do you, and especially if you're advising other companies, what are different ways that they can think about building the business case for making these types of commitments?
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. So to your first question, we plan to use the credits that come with Leaf to compensate for our emissions during the transition to net zero, between now and 2030 in particular. And what I do think is great about Leaf is that there is very clear pathways that you can choose as a participant that suit your purpose. Like one pathway, as Aaron described, comes without any kind of carbon credit or without any kind of compensation claim. It's just for companies that want to support the cause here. And do that in a structured way. Another way that we are planning to do is, we would like to compensate for our emissions through these kinds of credits. And then there's another pathway where there would be a corresponding adjustment, and these credits can potentially be used for compliance purposes. So, to your point about what's the business case for participating, I think there's many reasons why you could participate. One example is what I think Helga mentioned, when you are in the agriculture value chain, the whole industry is basically dependent on efforts like Leaf, maybe not just Leaf, but efforts like Leaf be successful. So it's just about protecting your future potential as a company. I think for others that want to be leading on climate for whatever other reason that might be, and I think there's plenty of reasons, there's lots of value at stake. I think every ton of emissions that you reduce today cannot be taxed tomorrow. So you reduce your exposure to climate risk in the future by taking action today. I think there's many more reasons actually why you want to be taking a lead on climate. And I think doing that together with others, together with the public sector, with the private sector, doing that at scale, doing that with high integrity, also reduces the risk of taking action in such a way. And lastly, for those companies that do have a compliance need, that do want to use credits to meet some of those criteria, there's also, of course, they got to invest in something and then better do it in something that has very high impact.
Great, thanks very much. I think we just have 1 minute left, so let me just offer 30 seconds each. Where do you see Leaf going? Where would you like to see Leaf go over the next year, over the next 5 years? And anything else you want to say, but short. He's giving me the 1 minute signs.
No, obviously, just think really also Norway. I think they showed tremendous tenacity and learning in getting us there, and then also the other countries, the UK and the US, of course, the whole team. It's only the beginning. It's absolutely only the beginning. We are proving that it can work, and so let's get it done. And I think you already gave us a target for the next year or 5 years that is rather ambitious, but we prove it can get done. So I'm positive about it. So thank you again, everybody, and certainly to the jurisdictions. They have the brunt of the work and will be there all the step of the way.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, and I'll keep it short. I think today and what we've achieved in the first 6 months is amazing, but it's really only the first step. We need to realize the potential, the scale. So I think there's still a lot of work to do, and most of it will indeed be on the supply side, at the jurisdictions, really making those changes on the ground. I think that's where the devil will be in the details, and I think we'll put in a lot of work there, and I look forward to making that a success.
Thanks to you both. Really appreciate everyone who participated today, and also to thank, again, all of the Leaf participants. And lastly, a call to action to everybody. This is a collective action platform. We need governments, we need private sector, we need civil society. And as Helga, as you both just said, this is just the beginning. This is $1 billion. It is a lot, I think, by any measure, historic in terms of what's happened previously. let's say 3 times the size of the voluntary carbon market last year. So it is a lot, but we need much more, and that's our singular focus now, is to scale and fast and quickly. So thank you all for joining. Thanks to the panel. Very much appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you at the rest of the COP. Thank you.